I never thought that something as simple as playing music at home could turn into a battle. But that's exactly what happened when my HOA decided to fine me. It started with a letter in my mailbox, a letter that felt less like a warning and more like a punch in the gut. They said I was disturbing the community with my music. And I thought, seriously? Music? But little did I know, this letter was only the beginning of a fight that would test my patience, my emotions, and even my sense of humor. The first time I read that fine, I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. Who gets fined for playing music in their own home? I thought maybe this was just a mistake, a silly misunderstanding, something that would clear up quickly if I just explained myself. But I was wrong. That letter wasn't a mistake. It was real. And it carried a message from the HOA. They had their eyes on me, and they weren't about to let this go. And let me tell you, there's something very unsettling about knowing that a group of people you barely talk to, people who live behind their curtains and peek out only when trouble brews, are suddenly treating you like a criminal. I wasn't throwing wild parties. I wasn't blasting music at midnight. I was just enjoying songs in my living room, songs that made me feel alive, songs that carried memories and meaning. But to the HOA, it was all noise. That word, noise. It stung me. Noise. To me, music is joy. Music is healing. Music is what keeps the soul alive when life gets heavy. And yet, here they were, calling it a nuisance. It wasn't just insulting. It felt like they were trying to strip away one of the things that gave me happiness. I'll be honest, I wanted to fight back right away. My first instinct was to march into that HOA office and demand answers. But something inside me told me to wait, to think, to play this smart. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that when you fight fire with fire, all you get is smoke. And I didn't want smoke. I wanted to win. So, I stayed calm. At least on the outside. Inside, I was boiling. Every time I turned on the radio or played my favorite playlist, I kept looking over my shoulder, wondering if another letter was coming. And soon enough, it did. Another warning. Another fine. The same cold language, the same accusation. You are disturbing the peace. Disturbing the peace. That phrase haunted me. Because if you've ever been unfairly accused of something, you know the frustration it brings. It's not just about the fine. It's about the way it makes you feel. Like you don't belong. Like you're the problem. Like you're a stranger in your own home. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just about music. This was about control. The HOA didn't care about peace. They cared about power. They wanted to remind me, and everyone else, that they held the rules, and we were just tenants in their little kingdom. That's when I decided something. If they wanted to play this game, I'd play too. But I wouldn't play it their way. No. I'd play it my way. With patience. With creativity. And yes, with a little bit of revenge. You see, when people push you into a corner, you have two choices. You can stay quiet and take the punches, or you can stand up and push back. And I was done being quiet. The funny thing is, this whole situation started to reveal things about me I didn't even know were there. Like how much I valued freedom. How deeply music was tied to my sense of identity. How much I hated being bullied by people hiding behind fancy titles like HOA board. It wasn't just about sound waves coming out of my speakers. It was about my right to live, my right to feel, my right to breathe freely in my own space. So, I began documenting everything. Every letter. Every fine. Every complaint. I kept a journal, I saved the envelopes, I even recorded the dates and times when I was supposedly too loud. I wanted evidence. Because I knew someday, this story would need to be told. Not just to defend myself, but to expose the pettiness of the people who thought they could silence me. And let me tell you, once you start seeing the cracks in their system, you can't unsee them. Because while the HOA was busy policing my playlists, they weren't paying attention to their own backyard. The clubhouse speakers, the same ones they used for parties and events, blasted music late into the night. Nobody got fined for that. Nobody got a warning. Nobody was labeled a nuisance. The hypocrisy was loud. Louder than my speakers could ever be. That's when the idea hit me. If they could accuse me of disturbing the peace with my little home setup, what about their massive, echoing, bass-thumping clubhouse system? Who was disturbing the peace then? And here's where the story takes a turn. Because instead of letting their rules crush me, I decided to use their own game against them. But before I tell you how I did that, I want to take you deeper into the mindset I was in. Imagine being told over and over again that something you love is wrong. Imagine being punished not because you hurt anyone, but because a group of people decided they didn't like your joy. Imagine feeling like every time you relax, every time you smile, someone is watching, ready to tear it away. That's what this felt like. And it builds up. It eats at you. Until one day you snap. Not in anger, but in resolve. And that's what happened to me. I reached a breaking point. I told myself, no more. If they wanted to find me for music, then I'd show them what music really sounded like. But I wasn't reckless. I didn't go out there blasting my speakers to prove a point. No, I played this with a bit of irony, a bit of wit. I knew the clubhouse was where they gathered. I knew their events relied on those giant speakers. And I knew that if anyone was truly disturbing the peace, it wasn't me. It was them. So, the plan began forming in my mind. A plan not to break the rules, but to expose them. A plan that would show the neighbors, the board, and anyone paying attention just how unfair and ridiculous this whole situation was. And trust me, the way it unfolded was nothing short of poetic. But before we get there, let me take you back to something important. The power of staying calm when everything inside you wants to explode. Because that's what saved me. That's what gave me the clarity to turn frustration into strategy. See, anger blinds you. It makes you lash out, say things you regret, and give your opponents the satisfaction of calling you unreasonable. But patience is a weapon. It's slow. It's steady. And when it strikes deep. I started talking to neighbors. Quietly, casually, almost like small talk. Hey, have you ever noticed how loud the clubhouse gets at night? I'd ask. And guess what? People noticed. People had been annoyed for years, but they stayed silent because they didn't want trouble. The HOA scared them into submission. But once one person speaks up, others follow. And soon, I realized I wasn't alone. My music wasn't the problem. The HOA's double standards were. That gave me strength. That gave me fire. And that gave me the idea that would turn this whole story upside down. Because if they wanted to find me for music, then I'd give them music they could never ignore. Not by blasting it from my house. Not by breaking the rules. But by turning their own rules against them in a way so clever, so bold, that it would leave them speechless. And that's exactly what I set out to do. I had the evidence. I had the frustration. And now, I had the idea. The HOA wanted to find me for playing music in my own home, but their own events were 10 times louder, shaking windows, and echoing through the neighborhood. The double standard was crystal clear. So, I thought, if they want to play this game, I'll give them a taste of their own medicine. Not with anger. Not with noise. But with something so unexpected they won't know whether to laugh or cry. You see, I realized something. The very thing they used against me, their rules, could also be my weapon. And the irony of it made me smile. Because while they were busy flexing their power over one person, they never imagined that same power could be flipped on them. The first step was simple. I started attending HOA meetings. Oh, they hated it. You could see it in their eyes, that mix of annoyance and fear when I raised my hand to speak. But I stayed calm. I wasn't there to argue. I was there to observe, to listen, to let them think I was harmless. And then, one evening, when the clubhouse speakers boomed so loudly that people across the street complained, I struck. I filed a formal complaint. Word for word, I used the same language they had used against me, disturbing the peace, creating a nuisance, disrupting community harmony. I turned their own phrases into a mirror, and I held it up for everyone to see. They couldn't ignore it. They couldn't dismiss it as easily as they dismissed me. Because I wasn't the only one who had had enough. Other neighbors started stepping forward too, whispering in agreement, even signing behind-the-scenes petitions. The clubhouse wasn't just my problem anymore. It was everyone's problem. And that's when the story took an even bigger twist. Because one day, as if fate was on my side, the HOA announced that they needed to replace the old speakers in the clubhouse. They were too worn out, too broken down from years of blasting music at every little event. And when I heard that, I knew this was my moment. I bought them. Yes, me. The guy they fined for music. The guy they tried to shame for noise. I bought the HOA's own speakers. The same speakers they had used to drown the neighborhood in sound. The same speakers that symbolized their hypocrisy. And I did it with a smile. Now, imagine the look on their faces when they realized the truth. The very person they tried to silence now owned the speakers that powered their clubhouse events. Talk about irony. Talk about poetic justice. Talk about flipping the script in a way they never expected. And let me tell you, it wasn't just about the speakers. It was about the message. The message that said, you can't bully me into silence. You can't twist rules to control people's joy. You can't call my music noise when yours is louder. It was about showing them that control works both ways. The reaction was priceless. Some board members were furious, whispering behind closed doors. Others looked embarrassed, like they'd been caught red-handed. But for once, they weren't in control. I was. Neighbors started laughing about it in hushed conversations. Can you believe he bought the speakers? They'd say. That's brilliant. And slowly, the narrative shifted. I wasn't the guy disturbing the peace anymore. I was the guy who stood up, the guy who refused to be bullied, the guy who played the game smarter than the people who wrote the rules. But here's the best part. I didn't even have to blast those speakers. I didn't have to use them to make my point. The symbolism was enough. The fact that they now had to borrow from me, rely on me, ask me, the very neighbor they find, for the same equipment they once used to drown out the silence, was victory enough. And here's the lesson I want you to take away from all this. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about yelling louder or fighting harder. Sometimes, the best revenge is patience, wit, and turning your opponent's own tools into your weapons. Sometimes, you win not by making more noise, but by making a point so sharp, it cuts deeper than sound ever could. Because when they tried to silence me, they ended up amplifying me. When they tried to humiliate me, they ended up exposing themselves. And when they thought they had control, they lost it to the very person they underestimated. That's the beauty of standing your ground. That's the power of refusing to let others define you. And that's the kind of story that stays with you long after the music fades. So, if you've ever felt silenced, if you've ever felt bullied by authority, if you've ever been told that something you love is wrong, remember this story. Remember that you don't have to fight fire with fire. You can fight it with strategy, with creativity, and with patience. And in the end, you just might come out not only winning, but laughing. And to anyone out there dealing with their own version of an HOA, or a boss, or a system that thinks it can control you, don't give up. Don't let them strip away your joy. Don't let them turn your happiness into a crime. Stay calm. Stay sharp. And when the moment is right, flip the script. Because nothing is louder than justice served with a smile. That's my story. The HOA fined me for music. But I bought their speakers. And that, my friends, is how you turn noise into power. If you enjoyed this story, if it gave you a laugh, or if it gave you courage, do me a favor, share it. Because somewhere out there, someone else is fighting the same kind of battle, and maybe this is the push they need to keep going. And if you want more stories like this, hit that follow, subscribe, and join me next time. Because trust me, this isn't the last time life gave me a fight, and it definitely won't be the last time I turned it into a story worth telling.